It was 1978, 77, that I met a man named Leonard Ravenhill. He lived in Texas, and I heard him preach, and he invited some of us to begin to come to his Friday night prayer meeting that he would hold. And there would be about 70 people there. And this young fellow, about my age, would come in, curly hair, t-shirt, jeans, bare feet, and he'd plop down at the piano and he'd play the hymns, and we'd sing "Holy, Holy, Holy," or "Blessed Assurance." And this young guy's name was Keith Green. And we would sing for 30 minutes, and then Leonard Ravenhill would preach for an hour or an hour and a half, and then we would pray for an hour, and time would stand still, and eternity seemed very, very real. And one of my favorite songs in all of my Christian experience was Keith's song, "I Want to Be More Like Jesus." And in that song, he has a stanza or a phrase that says, "The end of all my prayer is to care like my Lord cared. My one and only goal, His image in my soul." Now, if you've never heard that song by Keith Green, seek it out and listen to it. And as I think about those words, I often have to ask myself, is that true of me still? If someone said that about you in your journey, would it be true? Do you have an ongoing, continuing, developing, growing, passionate pursuit of Christ? Or are you in a rut and you're having to play the game? You sure wouldn't want any of your Christian friends to know that you're not hotly in pursuit of Christ. So you have to carry on the lingo, the talk, the image, the persona, and yet the reality is not there in the heart. David, God said, is someone, He said, here's a man that is a man, a person that is a person after my heart. And so, as I think about that, I think that must be at rock bottom, at the bottom line of our lives, there must be a heart that is in pursuit of Christ. As Psalm 42 says, as the deer pants for the streams, for the water brooks, so there is a panting, there's a desire within my heart for the living God. Thirst. Now this is a grace from God, and it is a responsibility we have too. We are to hunger and thirst. We are to desire Him. And we are to have our hearts and our wills and our minds and our focus engaged to pursue Christ. And so as I thought about this, I usually read through the Psalms every 3 months. And every time I come to Psalm 119, I get excited. Because it's all about that. How many verses are in this psalm? Don't look. I saw you look. How many verses in it? 176. 171 of them talk about the Scriptures. The precepts and the commandments and the statutes and the testimonies and the law of the Lord. David was consumed with wanting to know it. He was consumed with regularly being in it. He was consumed with, he developed a discipline to get it stored up in him. He was immersed in it. And as you look at this psalm, here's one way to think about it. Every time you read Psalm 119, you ought to think about it this way. What the psalm says he did is what made him be a man after God's own heart. And what David did in the Psalms, we can imitate. We can do. We can build into our lives, and that's how we will become a person who is in pursuit of God, who is in pursuit of Jesus Christ passionately, and who will continue to grow deeper to know Him. But there are no shortcuts. Every time you see a book that says 10 certain easy steps to spirituality, burn it. Or, as Tozer said, cut it up and cover the bottom of the birdcage with it. Or something. It's a lie. There are no shortcuts. There is no easy road except to follow Jesus Christ and get yourself in this book with consistency, with regularity. Let me give you a little testimony. Even after being a Christian a long time, and even after I was preaching, I was inconsistent in reading the Bible to feed my heart and to just for growth. I'd cram for a sermon, but I'd miss days, and then I'd struggle with this temptation or that, or I would things would easily get me down, and there was inconsistency in my Bible reading. And I finally got embarrassed about it, grieved over it, disappointed, and I would try to change it, no change. So finally I came to the place of saying, I cannot change myself in this. I cannot make myself get consistent. I don't know what to do. And so the Lord just kind of said to my heart, why don't you ask me to help you? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. It was, and I saw something that just ignited in my mind, and that is any inconsistency, any battle with sin, any besetting sin, any negligence of spiritual discipline. I saw if I had a desire for that to change, I should begin to ask God to give me the desire of my heart. I began to ask Him, Lord, give me a desire to be consistent in Your Word. And then as I'm able to read, as I do it, let me enjoy it and let my heart get addicted to it. And you know what? God began to do that. And now, after several years of this, by His grace, nothing has interrupted feasting on this Word, being in it. 10 chapters, 12 chapters, 15 chapters a day, praying through it, meditating on it, marking, cross-referencing, thinking about it. None of us have an excuse because we do what we desire to do. I was talking to a young man today in Kentucky over lunch, and he was asking me about, what about growth? And I said, well, how much time do you spend in the Word? Well, I'm a little bit ashamed to say I listen to a lot of Paul Washer sermons, but I'm kind of inconsistent in the Bible. I said, God's better than Washer, so let's get this straight right now. You can listen to that all day, but that doesn't mean you're going to grow. And I began to tell him what to do to get consistent. He's single, and I said, look, I have 6 children, and I have a lot more responsibility than you do. You're not married. You have an enjoyable job with a Christian ministry. I said, you have no excuse. And I showed him what to do to begin to consistently get in the Word. And it just ignited in his heart, and I think it's going to work. Question is this.